Welcome at this podcast. I'm sitting here with Ilja Sligte. We worked with him already for a few years. Ilja, could you maybe explain a little bit something about yourself?
I'm Dr. Ilja Sligte. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist and assistant professor here at the University of Amsterdam. We have lots of valuable insights that we can bring from neuroscience and psychology. How can we use insights on attention, on emotion, on behavior change and bring that to the real world? And actually train students up how to use insights from attention, from how the mind works. So that's, I think, one of the key things that we try to aim at here in the Master Brain and Cognition in Society.
So you also play a role in society with your company BrainsFirst.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges of being an academic, but also trying to, apply academic research into society?
I think the key thing that I see there is that when you do academic research, you want to be very rigorous. You want to do things that are really sound, reliable and valid. But then translating these into insights that are of practical use in everyday life for companies, for people, for teams. You actually need to translate the insights in things that are actionable. And that's typically quite difficult. Well, this translation part and actually creating good consultancy, that takes up quite some effort to move away from, say, the purely academic and make it really practical.
Can you maybe give a nice example of knowledge on a high academic, rigorous level that is practically very, very relevant?
So from my company, BrainsFirst, we started out sketching all the details on statistics, statistical models, and explaining them. And then actually we understand as academics, but in some sense you just want to know if you want to hire somebody, is this a yes or a no or a maybe, right? To kind of frame that more into, say, a traffic light, go, no go, or, well,
orange.
With some hesitation, that actually works at the advice level much better than providing p-values, r-values, and all kinds of statistics.
So what academic knowledge do you apply in your BrainsFirst company?
Measure the executive functions, so that basically are functions that give rise to all kinds of goal-driven behavior, where it's like planning for a project, or actually managing different tasks at the same time and completing them at the end of the day. These executive functions are very important to actually finish tasks and to schedule tasks. So all kinds of goal-oriented behavior that you could show as a human. We are in charge, right? Not like our cat or our dog, that actually is driven by the environment. So the environment dictates their behavior, and these functions actually give rise to typical human thinking behavior, decisions, driving also like how we can control what to attend to, what not to attend to. And you can actually use these insights to see where this cognitive profile, this executive function profile of a person matches with, say, a police officer, a salesperson, somebody who works in IT, or a journalist. So there's basically a blueprint for each different job that you can use to match to match a person where they are suited for a specific kind of function.
Either suited or where they need some improvement, maybe.
Sure.
So, Ilja, what kind of tricks do you use, if I may call it tricks, in your own education to influence, nudge, or change behavior of your students?
So I think, the key thing here is that what really sets apart this course is that there's lots of different students with different backgrounds. Some people have a bachelor in economy. Some people actually come from IT. Other people have a bachelor's in psychology. And to actually bring that together, and I'm not answering your question here, but each of them has their individual learning path. So you can actually see that we have developed fully functional apps, for example, in a couple of weeks in the past. We created some Power BI tools in the past, but also like full website redesigns are also possible. So it's kind of striking like what we can achieve. It depends a bit on say the skill set of the people that are put together in these different project groups working on a challenge. So can you reframe your question?
Well, my main question was, how do you, because in your course you ask students to work on assignments, or we like to call them challenges from companies in the real world. So how do you make sure that those students deliver high quality output, and what kind of mechanisms do you use in your own course to actually push them towards that direction?
Well, I think the real kind of creative analytical stuff, you don't really know what will come out of it, right? So up front, they are in that sense like, what do I actually need to do? Well, you need to act as a professional, and I think that's one of the key things. They actually need to really do the work themselves and create this path, and we guide them along the process by providing continuous feedback. So if we want to send out a report, it needs to have really high standards to actually be able to send it out to clients. So we ensure with a team of teachers, researchers, that it is actually up to standards. It really delivers value to the client. This kind of guidance, we do need to grade them too, but this guidance is one of the key aspects.
When did you start with this type of education?
What we used to have in cognitive neuroscience is we had a track that would basically train you up to become a PhD student. And then we have this 2 years research master program, training people up, with this kind of starting qualification as a PhD student. And then we have this 1 year master, and actually nobody is hired as a PhD student after this 1 year master. It's basically half the program, doing more or less the same as the 2 years master's program. So we thought like we need to create something for students that actually don't want to continue at university as a PhD student, and not in academia, but actually have useful skills in society, in business, in different kinds of organizations. So then you actually need to train them up with a different skill set, and actually know how to do data science, but also data consultancy, and translate that into easy to grasp solutions. So that's, I think, the start. So we created this master program about 6 years ago, with the aim to really equip these students with skills that are of use in society.
When you switch to this type of education, what changed in terms of more traditional way of teaching?
So typically you would have a textbook that you learn and a couple of lectures, and then there's an exam afterwards, right? And here it depends on your client actually. Probably you want to up your profit, you want to up your margin. You need to play with things like nudging, for example, things like attracting attention and customer retention. And that actually requires an entirely different skill set compared to when we work for, say, ministries that actually want to do profiling of perpetrators. And that's something entirely different, where you actually need to dive into the literature, build up this kind of neural network containing all the information to predict the likelihood that someone is going to commit a specific kind of crime. So depending on the business questions, it really defines how you shape the advice report and all the material that is needed to actually provide good advice to the client.
Can you give us an example of a typical week, how you push those students to, develop or deliver value to the client?
I would compare it really to a pressure cooker. So in the first week, for example, the pitch is due at the first day already. So
Right.
we really push them to, well, have a 10-page deck to pitch what they're going to do for the client.
Yeah.
Then get into contact with the client. And based on this feedback, they write a research approach, what they're going to do in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So there's a continuous integration of client feedback to focus on what is needed for the specific client and
Yeah.
the specific research question or what business question they actually have. This really interactive kind of process is way different where we integrate the feedback from the client continuously and monitor that.
And how do clients find this approach? I mean, it costs them time, of course, but...
Yeah, I think the amount of time that goes into this is limited to about 8 hours across the entire month.
Yeah.
Where the focus is mostly on the first week. Because you want to integrate this feedback from the client to really shape the question and the solutions in the direction that you want.
Yeah.
Some people want a website redesigned to basically increase conversion on their website, right?
Yeah.
That's an entirely kind of different problem than really diving into the literature and to make it a practical use to, for example, shape future leadership.
Can you maybe give a few or one or two concrete examples of what's maybe some success stories, what students have done in the past?
Sure. Let's take the simple example where we actually look at a branch of cafes, where we coupled all the inventory together and then looking at expiration dates for the produce that they sell. And then you actually want to use this information to change what people can order in the cafe. And you can actually use these kind of nudging approaches by placing some of the sandwiches, for example, in an intelligent way on the screens.
Yeah.
So you're actually steering the direction of the consumers here to choose the produce, well, that doesn't expire in say, the next 2 weeks. You want them to choose that less, and the stuff that you need to throw away, that should have a more prominent place, directing the choices of the consumers in that way. So that's a plain and simple example.
Before you continue, you mentioned the term nudging. Explain a bit what that is.
If we're talking about behavior change, say, well, making more healthy choices for people around us, you actually can put subtle changes in the environment, steering the behavior of people. Everybody knows this kind of example of this piano that's laid out on a stairs, and then typically people take the stairs because they actually hear the piano when they take the stairs, right? By changing subtle elements in the environment, you can actually steer the behavior of people quite effectively.
Are you also nudging your students?
I think nudging is actually something that should be physically present in the environment to actually steer behavior. And here, well, they're mostly thinking and translating that into say practical advice. So that's more like a mental effort. Then you need to use different tricks. And I think the key thing is that we are very clear on what they need to deliver.
Right.
And also, like grading wise, we don't want to grade them that fiercely in the beginning when they're starting to learn, and then basically up the weight of what they deliver along the course. And this is one of the striking things here. Typically, students deliver what I see as, say, 90% products grade-wise, because else you don't want to show it to your client.
Can you maybe name one more example of an advice that has been, adopted by the clients and that they now reap benefits of?
Well, one of the other examples that I can give is that we worked on a challenge for a mortgage supplier in the past. Their only channel of sales was their website. And we basically looked at how attention is allocated to the website. And by making very minor tweaks, we could up the conversion rates by 20% by changing some of the graphical elements in the website. So you can basically what people look at is a very good reflection of where their attention goes.
Yeah.
By actually monitoring that, you can make easy tweaks, then test it in an A/B setting.
Yeah.
In this case, we reached 20% more conversion in 2 weeks' time.
Nice.
So ridiculous,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. Hey, and what kind of scientific knowledge then was used to support the setup of the experiment?
Well, this is basically looking at what we know from the attention literature, right? And this is some free advice for everybody that watches this or listens to this podcast. Typically, if we're talking about attention, people tend to look at the eyes of a person in an image first, and then usually at the mouth, and then what the person is looking at. So if you have a picture of a person on your website looking at the action button, that's like the easiest kind of thing that you could change in your website to actually raise the conversion.
Right.
And if you want to know more about the tricks, then, well, send in a business challenge.
Yeah, in your course, you always, every year you need challenges, business challenges, but also from NGOs, governmental organizations.
All kinds of organizations.
Yeah. That's, I think, the beauty also of your course, that and the topic of psychology and brain cognition, that it's so widely applicable.
Right. So I think one of the key things that I want to stress here is that what we actually do here in brain and cognition is to study the laws of the mind. If you apply these laws, then this works for 90% of the people.
Yeah.
So you can really steer consumer behavior. You can really steer behavior change. And you, for example, also can see how specific programs within an organization, within a team, could cause resistance against change, and how to actually counter that. So, because we have knowledge about these laws on the mind, the laws of psychology, so to say. You can actually make effective behavior change programs.
Do you anticipate on any changes for future education?
Well, one of the key things that you see is that Gen AI is really on the rise. How to use that in a way that protects privacy, what to do, what not to do. And also, like, in terms of, like, I'm bad at certain things, right? I admit that. And I could use AI to help me in some aspects, but you might, for example, need some kind of our personalized AI assistance. So that's one of the parts that AI training, what to do, what not to do, that becomes a more integral part of the course in the future.
So the challenges from organizations can also be about that, right?
It can be. So we can advise on that and actually also create practical implementation guides. If you are faced with the fact that, okay, now you can use this AI, where to start, right? So that's also a key problem. So you need to have maybe a training program for your employees to actually start to use it in a very efficient way. And also know what works and what doesn't work.
Maybe one final question. So what is the main reason why companies should actually join such a course? Because, it costs them some time.
Sure.
And what is really the benefit that they can get out of that?
So I think the key benefit here is that you can really go far, somewhat outside the company looking in. So in terms of innovation, I think you kind of need to have a pressure cooker outside of the company looking in to really go far. And to really reel in new valuable information that you didn't know yet. So in that sense, to take this kind of scientific proven approach and make it applicable to your personal situation. I think, looking around at, for example, banks, if they want to launch a new product, you typically want a small group of people outside the ecosystem to provide advice that you can immediately use. Like Tiki, for example, is a great example where you have kind of a spin out of the company setting to create a new product prototype, and once it works, you can integrate it into your services again.
And for example, a group of students can actually check the new product, assess it on related to scientific
create
knowledge.
a prototype or an MVP that you wish to integrate that into your company, but you don't have the time or resources to do it. And this would be the ideal kind of situation to see what it could be.
Directly be implemented.
And let's be plain about this. This is over 500 hours of persons putting their time into a dedicated project. So you can really go far in this month.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing some insights. And feel free to reach out, submit a challenge, and see how far the students can bring your project.